Welcome back to the I Am Passionate podcast. It's your host, Jaren Smith, and I hope you all are doing well. So, for today's episode, I will be talking about the Avatar The Last Airbender movie that came out toward the end of July, and just kind of giving, like my review, some of my thoughts. So, spoiler warning if you have not seen the movie, again, there will be spoilers in this podcast episode. If you haven't seen it, pause the podcast, go watch it, and then come back. But, I know I've been doing like a lot of like reviews, trailer breakdowns, kind of after this. The one other thing that I plan to, kind of like break down that's not like football, because, also the Hall of Fame game is tomorrow, is the Ariana Grande album. I need a little bit more time to, kind of get all my thoughts together when it comes to that album. But Avatar, the last episode, I watched the movie twice and, kind of sat with it, truly thought about it, kind of dove into a little bit of lore. And so I was like, you know what? I feel ready. I can talk about it. Let's do it. But I just want to say this right now that, again, spoiler warnings if you have not seen the movie. First, I'm going to talk about the pros of the movie, like in my mind. I love the animation. I think the animation was amazing. I think, like, the air quotes young Republic City, or let's just say Republic City in its early stages, I think it looked awesome. I was really curious about like if we would ever get a piece of like Avatar seeing like Aang in Republic City. I was always so curious about that. Happy we got it in this movie. Also, I loved seeing, Teen Avatar, living their lives. Zuko as the Fire Lord, Toph teaching metal bending. Soph, I believe he was in the Southern Water Tribe in the movie. If he was in the Northern Water Tribe, my bad. Um, but regardless, he was basically home, like in his, let's just say natural like setting, like where he's probably at his most comfortable. Uh, and just kind of seeing them all like living their lives. I think it was pretty awesome. Like I kind of loved seeing that like yes, they may be not in the same, they may all not be traveling around the world together, but if needed they will all come at the drop of a hat, to come help Aang or to come help each other in general. And also next, I think the new voice actors did a great job. When I watched it the first time, I don't know if I just had like my expectations were too high, and so like I was like, I don't know why they didn't just get like the original voice actors for this, because the original voice actors, they're older now. They would have like be a believable, like character, which like I get it. Some of them might not really be actors anymore, so like I kind of had to sit and think about that for a minute, and also. Also giving new people a chance, putting new spins on a character, that's always a good thing as long as it's done right. And like even though the first time I really did think that all the characters, like voice actors and all the characters were portrayed well. I think the first time I think I was a little too stuck in nostalgia. But, kind of looking back at it, like a second time, I think, the voice actors did an amazing job. I think the voice actor who was perfectly cast would have been Sokka. I feel like his, Sokka's sarcasm, his like witty, his like comedic aspect, I think that was, I think he did a great job at it. Toph was really funny in the movie. Toph's voice actor, was amazing. Katara, I feel like is well cast. I believe the most famous act besides for Batista, being Taga, is Zuko's voice actor. I could be completely wrong. I just think out of the Team Avatar, the one voice actor I knew was Zuko's voice actor. But regardless, I think seeing the new spin on these characters, I think it was amazing. And plus, I think these characters, they're not 12, 13, 14 years old anymore. I don't know how much time has passed. I'm just gonna guess and say that they're in their 30s. Like, I don't want to say they're in their 20s. I mean, they could be. I think that's too low of a guess for me, but saying that they're probably in their 30s is probably pretty believable to me, at least. But let me know what your thoughts are. Maybe there is a confirmed age for all of the characters. I just do not know. That was not like in my lore specifically, like my lore deep dive. Uh, if I had to say who my favorite character was in the movie, it is definitely Sokka, for the same reason I was talking about earlier. Like, I just was laughing pretty much at everything Sokka was saying in the movie. And like, spoiler warning, specifically at the end of the movie where Katara and Aang, basically they had a kiss, and Sokka was like right there, like an overprotective big brother was, and I just was like laughing my butt off, and like I was expecting a serious response at that moment, but no, he was very funny in that moment. So like that was just super super funny. Uh, and so but my favorite character in all of like Avatar, like lore in general, It's easily Toph. Easily. Like, no doubt about it. I just think Toph is such an amazing character. Um, Next, another spoiler warning here. Again, I'm trying to say spoiler warning in front of everything. I love the whole concept of, in my mind, Avatar Sonam was a lost or maybe even forgotten avatar, or because like um a lot of the previous avatars that Aang was trying to speak to, they didn't know who Avatar Sonam was, and so like that's why I'm using my own label of lost and or forgotten avatar. But eventually, obviously, Aang was able to get in contact with Avatar Sonam, and kind of the plot advanced from there. And so like I always was just very curious. I'm like just thinking from kind of speaking about the Legend of Korra. We get Avatar One. We learn about the first Avatar, and then we learn about like Yang Chen and Kyoshi, and like some of the light novels. We learn about Roku, like in the series and everything, and then obviously we learn about Aang, as like the series goes on. You learn about Korra in her respective series, but I always just was curious on like, was there an Avatar that like maybe just nobody knows about, or like even if you like, I brought up the in the last episode about the Seven Havens, I brought up the spirit library. Is there an avatar that even he might not know that much about? That was my concern. Like, I shouldn't say concern, that was my question, because like the avatar has been reborn dozens of times, so like there's bound to be at least one that has the potential of being forgotten, or just the world is not as knowledgeable on. So kind of seeing that, I think, was pretty cool. Like, it was something that he had to research a lot. Again, I just think that was cool. Here's the biggest spoiler warning throughout this entire episode. Again, pause the episode, even though there's already been a couple of spoilers, but I warned you. Pause the episode, go watch the movie, come back. So the biggest thing that I kind of had a question about in Avatar, it doesn't even take place when Aang is the main character. It's with Korra, and I was always so curious on how are there so many sky bison in the Legend of Korra. And I get it. Some of the comic books probably already answered this question, so there are probably already people who knew the answer as to why there were so many sky bison, or it could have been a detail I even missed in Legend of Korra. But we get that answer in this movie, specifically the ending. The whole like plot of this movie, Aang's dream, is to rebuild the Air Nation. And my maybe other people are like this, I'm not sure, but in the cartoon series, and this movie, the focus is so much on Aang being the last Airbender. Sometimes I forget that Appa was the last Sky Bison. So we thought. At the end of the movie, they found, a bunch of sky bison living peacefully, showing that, Appa is not the last sky bison. And, I just was always like so curious about it. I'm like, how do you have like enough sky bison for, a bunch of people in the Legend of Korra? Like, that just seemed to come out of nowhere, at least to me, at least. But let me know down below kind of what your thoughts are like on the movie. Let me know what you liked about the movie. Let me know what you disliked. Let me know how many times you've seen the movie. um like whenever I try to do these reviews, not even just on like movies, this also goes for music. I try to watch and or listen to like forms of music or like a movie, try at least twice. I feel like you've got to do it at least twice to get out a good opinion, give out good takes, give out some good thoughts. I feel like if I only listened and or watched to an album or like this movie once, I can still give good thoughts, I can still give good perspective, but I feel like the conversation might not go as deep as it could and or should, because Avatar, like I've already established, it's been a pretty big year for Avatar. I just think that watching this movie twice gives it the conversation it deserves, even if this ends up kind of being a quicker episode. Because like this movie has been out for a while, which kind of get going into like my first con. This movie should have came out a long, long time ago. We're in August. It's August 5th at the time of the recording. This movie came out, I believe, on July 25th on Paramount Plus. But this movie was leaked back in like March or April. I had the chance to watch this movie way back then. And so like maybe that was why, some of like when I watched it the first time, like maybe my expectations were too high because like I chose to not watch the movie when it was first leaked because I did not want to, I thought I would enjoy it more if, I waited to watch the movie. But, like I came to watch it, watching it normally, watching it as it's released, and I still enjoyed it. Just that first time I kind of was thinking to myself, I'm like, is this it? Like the movie's an hour and a half, so like it's a pretty good length for like a movie. Like if this was a 2 hour movie, I would have been surprised. But like 90 minutes, perfect for, in my opinion, like any movie. Like if you're able to tell your story in in an hour and a half. Uh, I just was kind of thinking, I'm like, there's gotta be more. There's gotta be. And then after I watched it the first time, I'm like, dang. So like I didn't really know what to think after I watched it the first time. Second time, like it kind of just came to me on like random instinct to just watch it second time. Like I just like, you know what? I'm gonna watch it again because like I'm thinking of it like after the Last Airbender. I've probably watched the cartoon version maybe about 5 times, easy. Um, Probably more because like if I think about it, when I was younger and when my siblings were watching it, I always watched bits and pieces with them. Just with me watching it myself for myself, I would have watched it 5 times. But watching other people, you know, like if I'm in the room and them watching it, I probably watched it way more than I originally think. And so I'm like, you know what? Let me give it the same respect. And that second watch through is where I had more appreciation for it. But I think this movie should have came out, a lot sooner. And I know there was a whole situation, about this movie being leaked and like legal action, like people being in trouble. I don't know how much money this movie has made. I did not really look into that. But I think that, for me at least, if this movie would have came out much sooner, my expectations probably would not have been as high because like I know people like I like literally on Twitter these days, people literally leak whole movies. Like literally on Twitter, like movie called The Odyssey came out I think about 2 weeks ago. There's literally a whole Twitter post right now where you can literally go watch the entire movie on Twitter for free. And like I wasn't seeing that for Avatar when it was first leaked, and I'm sure a bunch of you are probably gonna be like, "What? How did you not see like any of the leaks, any of the spoilers?" Did not see a single one. Um, and I have not seen a single one for the Spider-Man movie that just came out. I'm knocking on wood right now. Knocking on wood. I'm gonna stay away from them. But I haven't seen a single one for that. And I do know when Avengers Doomsday come out, I will uninstall social media if I have to. I am not being spoiled for that movie. Like I ain't doing it. But another there was another movie that like the whole thing was posted on like Twitter for you to like watch it. Like I know from time to time I see like whole like Dragon Ball movies on Twitter, like whole entire things. So like I think that's only just gonna get worse as time goes on. But kind of going back to Avatar because that was a little bit of more of a side thing. If I had to say my biggest gripe with this movie was that it was predictable. It just was very very predictable, and I'm not really someone who like critiques a movie on being too predictable because like I feel like me myself sometimes like as a person I feel like sometimes I'm probably a predictable person, so like I don't really judge like movies or TV shows too much on being too predictable unless it's like predictable enough to like ruin the movie. This movie was not predictable enough to ruin the movie experience for me, not at all. Like here's a spoiler. Essentially, I talked about earlier how Avatar Aang, spoke to Avatar Sonam about, basically it's like the plot of the movie. Actually, no, let me backtrack because I'm kind of getting this wrong. Um, Essentially, Aang, was journeying to basically ended up finding, Taga in like high above the sky, like frozen or sealed, whatever words you want to use to describe it. And he was trapped. And so like Aang eventually frees Taga. And so like in my mind, I'm thinking, I'm like, you don't just imprison, seal someone in a location where like basically only the Avatar can get to without a valid reason. Without like you've got to have a darn good reason to take actions to imprison someone this high in the sky. Like Zuko could not have done that if he wanted to. Like he could not have freed Taga if he wanted to. Katara could not have done it. Only the Avatar was going to do it, which that was a plot point of the movie. Uh, So I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, this is gonna be like a gaslighting, like, or just you're telling the truth, but you're leaving out details. I can't think of the right words to use for that. Like, I just knew it was not a matter of if, it was a matter of when, Taga's true colors would, come forth in the movie, which like I just knew it would. I just knew it would. Um, but it didn't take away from my enjoyment, nor do I think it should take away from anyone's enjoyment about the movie being predictable. Uh, I just, for me at least, like when I can see things coming, I'm like, yeah, this is gonna happen, and then when it does, I'm out. Right. So like, I think some people, myself included, sometimes we probably take pride in being able to see what's coming in a movie. But for me at least, I think I would have liked it if like maybe it took a little longer in the movie to, for him to be revealed as the villain. But I do understand if it went longer into the movie without him being revealed as like the villain or the main antagonist, then there would have been less time for action scenes. So like I got to pick and choose my own battles. So like regardless, I do still think Taga and his story was very very intriguing. And then so like my last one, and this is just more so a me thing. I don't think this is a problem with the movie. For me, hi Nala, by the way. No, my mom's dog is barking. For like movies, because like I'm an action movie fan. I'm an anime movie. I'm an anime fan. Whenever I see like characters lose fights too easily, that bothers me. Like now, I understand that most of the time in those situations, the people that tend to lose, they're truly going up against someone truly strong. Like I'll give an example in a like anime in the Battle of Gods or early in Dragon Ball Super, almost all of the Z fighters lost to Beer super easily, but it makes sense. So like I wasn't really mad at any of them losing that easily. I really wasn't. But in like this movie, another spoiler warning ahead. Essentially, kind of right as stuff was starting to go down, true colors being revealed. Uh, Katara, Zuko, Toph, and Sokka went up against Taga, and they ended up losing. That action scene, like it was a good action scene. Like it was definitely good. I enjoyed watching it. It wasn't crazy long of an action scene, which I get that was also part of the point. I would have liked it if that was like a little bit longer because it just seemed too easy. Because to me, in my opinion, at that point, I, I'll ask a question for you all to answer down in the comments. Would you say by the end of the original cartoon that specifically I'm referring to the benders here? Would you say that Katara is a master waterbender? Would you say that Zuko is a master firebender? Would you say that Toph is a master earthbender? If your answer for those three is not yes, then I disagree with you wholeheartedly. We can literally have an episode debating about it in the comments. But if I'm gonna throw Sokka in there, I would say he's a master, like let's just say like he's a master strategist, he's a master like with this. So he's just a master in combat without being able to bend. And so like I understand Saga had the power of airbending, and considering that the time that he like was first like alive in before like what happened to him happened to him, I understand that he was likely a very very powerful person. I just was upset at seeing, which I think it's because we got to see the trials, like the struggles that Team Avatar went through, and so like seeing them lose like that, I'm like, dang, like really? So like that's just like a me thing, seeing characters I like losing a little too easily, which I understand for the like not even just plot in general, but for the plot of this movie, stuff like that has to happen to some extent. But hey, maybe that's just a me thing. Let me know down below if you're like the kind of person who does not like when like characters you like, in like your favorite TV shows or movies just lose a little too easily. That could just be a me thing. And I feel like I'm rambling, so like overall, we're kind of just give out my overall rating and kind of final thoughts about the movie. I do still think this was a good movie. I think if it came out sooner, I think I would probably have judged this movie a little bit more. And I feel like a lot of people, maybe people who would have seen the movie sooner with those leaks, they probably have like a similar thought process. Or if they're, because I know I'm not crazy judgmental, even though that I feel like for most of the reviews I've done, this might be the most judgmental I'm being. Um, but I would say I would give this movie a 7.5 out of 10. I think the biggest thing that took away from the movie for me was just the predictability thing. And But I would say the biggest like strength of this movie, other than the animation, I would say the characters were portrayed really, really well, really, really well. I love that, and this was a project that people have been wanting to see for so long, and I feel like it has been talked about for even longer. And like the original, series, I don't know exactly when it ended. If I had to guess, maybe 2007, 2008. We're in August, so let's just say it's getting close to 20 years since the original cartoon was over. So like this is something that people have been waiting for a long time. And like I'm sure people, if you ask the right people, they probably would be like, yeah, I would love to see more adventures of, Aang as an adult, Zuko as an adult, so on and so forth. So I my final rating for the Avatar: The Last Airbender movie is a 7.5 out of 10. I think the movie was good. I don't think the movie was mid because at first I'm not gonna lie, if I had made this episode after I first watched, I probably would have called the movie mid. We're like, you know what? I need to watch it a second time to give it a fair assessment, and I think I'm being fair, you know, this second time around. But let me know your thoughts down in the movie down below. What rating would you give the movie? What's something you really liked about the movie? What's something you really disliked about the movie or thought maybe could have been better? And I have another episode coming up for you all tomorrow, so stay tuned for that. Don't forget to leave a like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you all in the next episode.